come to order. Would ask that unauthorized visitors exit chamber at this time as the Senate is coming to order. It is now my distinct honor to recognize the Distinguished Rules Committee Chairman, Senator from the 53rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. There are a lot of people here at the Capitol. I thought that qualifying for opponents was next week. But the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, for your good works on the journal. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions introduced, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 484 by Senator Payne, the 54th, and another bill we talked to exempt the city of Dalton from the election requirements.
State and local governmental operations.
Senate Resolution 953 by Senator Gooch, the 51st.
Economic development.
Senate Resolution 954 by Senator James, the 35th. The resolution recognizes
Transportation.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had a consideration of the following legislation instructing board the same back to the Senate with following recommendation. Senate Bill 412 do pass by Senator Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair will recognize Senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask unanimous consent to suspend the morning roll call.
Is there objection? Without objection, the morning roll call will be suspended. Looks like a little slow in getting our quorum in here. I'd like to have the Senate's attention for a moment. Call upon the Senator from the 40th to present and introduce our Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Governor. I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Matthew Keaty. He's an Associate Professor of Emergency Medicine at Emory University and is the lead medical director for Emory Healthcare. He's also the Chief of Emergency Medicine at Emory University Hospital and Interim Medical Director of the Emory Johns Creek Emergency Department. Dr. Keaty has a lot of jobs. He received his MD from Eastern Virginia Medical School and completed his residency at UNC Chapel Hill, so he doesn't care much about Duke. So with that, I introduce to you Dr. Matthew Keaty. Doctor?
I hate to correct you, but I'm a Dookie at heart. I grew up, so I'm mixed family blood. But anyways, thank you for all you guys do for the state of Georgia. I know our patients appreciate it.
Let me have the Senate's attention for just a moment. Would ask that all senators please cease all audible conversation at this time. We are so honored to have Senator David Perdue visit us here in the Senate today. We are very proud of the work that he is doing in Washington, D.C. on behalf of all the citizens here in Georgia. He is the only Fortune 500 CEO that serves in the state Senate, which gives him a very unique perspective on the issues not only confronting our citizens, but certainly keeping and helping keep America competitive. He is a great fighter on the issue of debt, and we appreciate all the good work that he has done. Please join me in welcoming our United States Senator David Perdue.
Thank you, Governor. Please, thank you. Thank you, Governor Cagle. I'll be very brief. You guys have a lot of work to do today like I do, but I want to say three things to you. Number one, it's good to be home. I go back to the swamp later today, but I want to thank you, number one, for what you do here in Georgia. I brag on you all the time. I know that sounds rhetorical, but it's not. Government works in state capitals around the country because of people like you, and you don't get thanked enough for that, and I just want to today thank you for doing your job here, and that the results of that are that Georgia, among other things, is that Georgia today is the top place in the country in which to do business. That doesn't happen by accident. As a business guy, I know that, and you guys get all the credit along with Governor Deal. We can keep this ball rolling if we continue to do what we've been doing the last 10 or 12 years. The second thing is, last year I want to bring a report to you that we focused on a couple of things under a new administration. We focused on job one was growing the economy, getting the economy moving again. We focused on regulations, energy, and trade. I'm here to tell you today that we've eliminated 860 rules and regulations. Over 1,550 people in the VA have lost their jobs because of non-performance, over 500 in the Department of Education. Things are moving there to make government work in the nation's capital like you do here in the state capital. This year, we're working on immigration, trade, and infrastructure to continue to focus on growing the economy. I'm excited to tell you today one thing that you probably haven't seen in the press because they don't want to talk about this is that in this last spending bill is a clause that gives us the ability, it creates a select committee on budget reform. I'm one of 16 people out of the Senate and the House out of 535 people who are put on that committee, 8 Democrats, 8 Republicans. It's bicameral, bipartisan, to create a process to fund the federal government. Our budget process up in the Capitol does not work the way it does here. You guys have a balanced budget law. Every year you fund the state before you go home. In the federal government, it doesn't work that way. We've only funded the government 4 times since 1974 on time. That means out of 44 years, the federal government has only been funded 4 times, and it actually has been shut down 20 times because the budget process doesn't work. So for 3 years, I've been working with 12 Republicans, 3 Democrats to get at a politically neutral platform to change the way we fund the federal government. And what we're using as a model, frankly, are 44 states that have balanced budget laws and that actually fund their governments on time. So hear me more than anything else today to say thank you for all you do for Georgia and for our country. God bless you guys. God bless Georgia, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, guys.
Senator from the 8th. Senator from the 8th. Okay, let me have the Senate's attention for a moment. Would ask that all senators please take your seats and cease all audible conversation at this time as we are preparing for our morning devotion. Doorkeepers, if you would, please secure the chamber at this time. All senators, take your seats, cease all audible conversation. It is now my distinct honor to recognize the senator from the 16th for the purpose of leading us in our pledge and introducing our chaplain of the day. Senator.
Can we stand for the pledge to the American flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The state flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Well, good morning. It is my distinct honor to introduce to you the pastor of today. He's become a great friend as I've got to know him, and let me give you just a little bit about him. Pastor Josh Sufco is married to his lovely wife, Kelsey, and she is from Macon, Georgia. Now, you're going to have, as we get a little bit further, you're going to understand why that's important. They have two daughters, Chloe and Sophie. He serves as the senior pastor of Flat Creek Baptist Church. He received the Preacher of the Year award from the world's largest Christian university, Liberty University, where he was also earned 3 degrees. This summer, he'll graduate with his doctorate degree from Gateway Seminary in Los Angeles, California. Pastor Josh is an adjunct professor at the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and is a contributor to Thomas Nelson Publishing. He enjoys fishing and watching the Ohio Buckeyes. So he might enjoy the Ohio Buckeyes, but I believe he found his wife in Macon, Georgia. So that tells you what he likes about the South. So with that, I'll ask Pastor Josh to come forth and speak to us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Harbin. It is truly a joy to be with you. I appreciate Senator Harbin so much. He has been a great friend. He's been a mentor. I've learned so much wisdom from Senator Harbin the last year or so. He called me about a month ago. He said, "Josh, do you believe in free speech?" I said, "Yes, sir. I believe it's our fundamental right. I believe in free speech." He said, "Good. I'd love for you to give one on your birthday, March 5th, to the Senate." You don't believe that about Senator Harbin now, do you? We all love a good love story, don't you? I brought with me today one of my mentors, Bill Priester. He's the pastor emeritus at Flat Creek Baptist Church. He and his wife have been married for 60 years this year. 60 years. It triggered in my mind of a couple. This couple had to have been from South Georgia. You'll find out why in here in a moment. They were celebrating their 50th year of marriage together. The newspaper came and they wanted to interview them. 50 years of marriage together. What is the secret sauce of staying in love for that long? And her husband said, "Oh, it's real simple. Let me take you back to our honeymoon. We went to the Grand Canyon. And there was my new bride, beautiful. We got on some of those pack mules, and we were working our way down through the Grand Canyon. And all of a sudden, that mule slipped a little bit. She grabbed a hold of that mule, and she said, 'That's once.' That mule kept going about 100 yards. Slipped again. She grabbed a hold of the other ear. That's twice. That third time, that poor little mule just slipped a tiny little bit. his loving bride got off that mule, pulled out a revolver, and shot the mule dead. He said, my bride, my loving bride. He got off his mule and got over there and said, I made an angry protest to her. How could you do that to that poor little mule? It did nothing to you at all. And she looked at him with those beautiful South Georgia eyes, and she said, that's once. He said to that newspaper reporter, he said that after that moment, we've been good since. We've been good since. Can I tell you of the greatest love story of all? Can I remind you of the greatest love story of all as we begin our day here in the Senate chamber, that God loves you. Jeremiah 31, verse 3, it says that he has an everlasting love for you. God has an everlasting love for you. We say it in this day, God has an out-of-this-world love for you. The creator, the designer God who made you, fashioned you in your mother's womb, loves you. That's what it says over there, and the Bible tells us in John chapter 3, verse 16, a familiar passage to all of us. You know it well. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. That's what the Bible says over there in 1 John chapter 4, verse 8, that God is love. As we begin our day, as we work our way through our day, let's just note this. Let's not put so much emphasis on one attribute of God, or really we'll misrepresent him completely, right? Although he is a God of love, we know that, we champion that, we believe that, we wrap our minds around the great doctrine that he is love. But dear friends, he is also a God who is holy. He is also a God who is just. He is also a righteous God. We cannot put so much emphasis on one attribute of God, or we'll misrepresent him completely. But I've come this morning to simply remind you that God has an everlasting love for you as he formed you, as he fashioned you in your mother's womb. It reminds me of a song that we sing down there in South Atlanta. I'm so glad our Father in heaven tells us of his love in the book he has given. Wonderful things in the Bible I see, but this is the dearest, that Jesus loves me. Though I forget him and I wander away, still he does love me, no matter where I stray. Back to his loving arms I would flee when I remember that it's Jesus who loves even me. Jesus loves me. Jesus loves me. I'm so glad that Jesus loves even me. May I pray with us? Father, it is in the name of Jesus we come and we thank you for your great love for us that you have bestowed upon us, and we resonate with the words of the Apostle John. What manner of love is this that you have bestowed upon us? We're grateful. We're thankful. And Lord, I pray that we would lean into your love today. As we look across in this room, there are many of us that need your touch and your love. And Father, I pray that we would manifest that out through our actions today. Lord, we thank you for loving us first so we can love second. It's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
We have another special group we would like to recognize, and the Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 848 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, a resolution recognizing March 5th, 2018 as Council for Quality Growth Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas the Council for Quality Growth is a 3-year-old nonprofit trade association representing the growth and development industry with the mission of advocating for balanced and responsible growth in Metro Atlanta and Georgia. And whereas the Council is a component of a diverse membership of developers, contractors, engineers, architects, planners, law firms, bankers, and anyone with an interest in growth and development. And whereas the Council will host its 4th annual Council for Quality Growth Day at the State Capitol on March 5th, 2018, in order to bring awareness of development needs to members of the Georgia General Assembly and to allow council members to interact with the policy makers at the state level. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize March 5th, 2018 as Council for Quality Growth Day at the State Capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. It's actually 33 years that the Council for Quality Growth has been in existence, and they do a wonderful, wonderful job. We appreciate, obviously, Michael Paris, but also the entire leadership group that is here with us today. And to speak to the resolution and recognize our special guest, it's now my honor to call upon the distinguished senator from the 21st.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I bring before you today is Council on Quality Growth Day at the State Capitol. And I have with me today the chairman, Steve Leibowitz, the vice chairman, Ann Hanlon, which will be the first female chairman in 33 years next year, Doug Jenkins, and then the executive director, president, CEO, Michael Paris. Let me tell you, folks, the Council on Quality Growth does great things for our region. It started out in Gwinnett, but they facilitate open and constructive conversation between the development community and the policy makers, and that's very important as we try to make sure we have quality growth. And I can give you an example in the infrastructure bills, House Bill 170, they were a major player from an advocacy standpoint, and I'm going to weigh on them for Senate Bill 386, the transit bill also, and be an advocate for that. But this is the one entity that can bring groups together. And one of the things I'm really proud of them is I serve on that board. They have instituted an Emerging Leaders Initiative to start grooming young people in our community. And that's a great initiative. So it's the only board I now serve on, and I'm proud to be part of it. The Council on Quality Growth is really for quality growth and development. And I do want to mention before I hand it over to the chairman, they have an award called the 4 Pillars Award. It stands for quality, responsibility, vision, and integrity. And this year's recipient was Governor Nathan Deal. And that really describes our governor. So very proud of that award and proud that the governor received that this year. Now I'd like to call on Chairman Steve Leibowitz for some comments.
Thank you, Senator Beach, Mr. Lieutenant Government. On behalf of the Council for Quality Growth, we are honored to be there. I'm speaking on behalf of our wonderful Executive Director, Mike Paris, my colleagues, Ann Hanlon, who represents the Perimeter CID, and Mr. Doug Jenkins of Georgia Power. I am a law partner with the firm Denton's. But what we do is work with you, work with our government to try to bring good government to our metro area. We are honored to be honored today. This is very special for us, for you to recognize the work that we do. And we are honored to work on behalf of the initiatives that you are working on. We know how important the work that you do is, and we are happy to help you on any time that you have any policy decisions that will affect our government. We are there for you. Thank you again for the honor today. I know you have important work, so go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Well done. Well said. Appreciate it.
Let's get a picture down.
We have another special group we would like to recognize at this time. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 777 by Senators Kennedy of the 18th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Mercer University for its commitment to higher education for other purposes. Whereas Mercer University is a private liberal arts university located in Macon, Georgia that was founded in 1833. Whereas Mercer is one of only 4 universities in the state of Georgia to be ranked in U.S. News and World Report's top national tier, and whereas Mercer University was rated in the top 10% of the Princeton Review's 2014 edition of the best 378 colleges, and where it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this extraordinary university be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Mercer University for providing world-class quality educational experiences and developing the next generation of leaders. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. It is such an honor to have Mercer University that is here with us today, of course, under the leadership of President Underwood. What a wonderful, wonderful man, and how he has led the organization to even greater heights. And we appreciate not only them being present with us, but all the good work in which they do for their university. To speak to the resolution and recognize our special guest, it is now my distinct honor to call upon the senator from Bibb County, the senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I am pleased, honored, and yes, just a little bit proud to recognize my alma mater, Mercer University, this morning. I am a double bear, and I am proud of it. Mercer University, founded in 1833, has more than 8,600 students in 12 different colleges and schools, including liberal arts, business, engineering, education, music, continuing and professional studies, law, theology, medicine, pharmacy, nursing, and health professionals. Campuses located in Macon, Atlanta, Columbus, and Savannah. Mercer is recognized as one of only 4 universities in the state of Georgia to be ranked in the top tier nationally according to U.S. News and World Report. Mercer has excelled in athletics with the Women's Basketball Southern Conference Championship. And also, you'll hear probably from our president, service is a big part of the life at Mercer and what Mercer instills in all of its students. I want to recognize some folks I think are in the gallery, are proud Mercer Bears as well. If you would stand, let us recognize you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And in addition, we've got some folks on the stage behind me that are very important. One you probably recognize as a familiar face, Kathy Cox. I'm very proud to say, and Mercer's very proud to call her Dean Kathy Cox. She is dean of our law school now. As you may know, she served many years in the House and also as Georgia's Secretary of State. Behind me also is Dr. Gary Dent of Mercer's Medical School, Dustin Horn, who is a third-year medical school student, and Ryan Farmer, who is a third-year law school student and also my intern this year. I want to mention one other thing about Mercer and something that it has done recently, and that is the Nathan Deal Scholars that it has for the medical school. And those students that receive that scholarship have a full tuition paid for by the university, and they commit to come back and practice medicine in rural Georgia. One other person I want to introduce to you is our president, Bill Underwood, who has very ably led the university in athletics and academics and in all respects, and we're proud and pleased to call him our president. Mr. Underwood, President, if you would come speak to us.
Governor Cagle and Senator Kennedy, thank you for the honor of being recognized this morning. Our university was launched in 1833 by an act of this General Assembly. We were launched for the purpose of preparing young men and women for careers in service to communities throughout this state, and we've been at that work now for 185 years. Throughout that period, we've partnered with you to accomplish important objectives for this state, whether it's preparing well-educated doctors to serve rural and underserved areas of our state, or preparing engineers to serve the largest industrial employer in the state of Georgia, or really whatever needs the state has, we're available to serve you in meeting those needs. Today, we are one of the four top-tier national research universities in Georgia, but we're also the largest private educator of Georgians in the world. And we're proud of that distinction. We're proud of the work that we do with you, and we're grateful to you for your service.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I want to let you all know that next Tuesday, March 13th, in the Capitol, we will hold what is becoming an annual tradition here in the Capitol. That's the 4th annual U.S. Citizenship Naturalization Ceremony. This is an exciting day for these new Americans that have fully completed the long naturalization process. And a couple weeks ago, we passed Senate Resolution 899, which recognizes that day, Tuesday, March 13th, as New Americans Day at the state Capitol. And we have a group in the gallery today for the resolution. Please join me in welcoming them this morning and in congratulating those new Americans in advance of their successful completion of the naturalization process.
Thank you, Senator. We have another special group we would like to recognize this time. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 670 by Senators Thompson, the 14th, and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Dr. John Harper and for other purposes. Whereas Dr. John Harper earned a bachelor's degree at Baptist College in South Carolina, a specialist degree at the Citadel, and a doctorate from the University of South Carolina in Curriculum and Instruction. And whereas he has served for a total of 49 years in education, starting as a classroom teacher in South Carolina and ending with nearly 10 years as the superintendent of Bartow County Schools. And whereas Dr. Harper truly loves the service of ensuring a bright future for children and has fought to maintain art, music, physical education programs, and nurses in every school. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize Dr. John Harper's astounding contributions to Bartow County schools, the community, and the legacy that will remain after his retirement. And Senate Resolution 690 by Senators Thompson, the 14th, and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Howard Hinesley and for other purposes. Whereas Dr. Hinesley has been the superintendent of Cartersville Schools System since 2005, where he was responsible for leadership, administration, and management of the school system. And whereas Cartersville has been recognized as a Georgia School of Excellence as a result of Dr. Hinesley's efforts to provide a well-rounded and balanced educational experience for its students. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize Dr. Howard Hinesley's astounding contributions to the Cartersville school system and the community and commend him on a successful and fulfilling career as the superintendent of Cartersville schools. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. We are very, very honored to have two remarkable superintendents, individuals that are championing real innovation in the classroom and improving education in their communities. I have had the great privilege of working both with Dr. Harper as well as Dr. Hinesley and have witnessed up close and personal their willingness and desire and passion and love for our kids. Dr. Harper with the College and Career Academy along with Dr. Hinesley with the charter system. These two individuals are remarkable leaders, and we are honored to have them with us today. To speak to the resolution and recognize our special guest, it's now my honor to call upon the Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Governor. It truly is an honor to be able to have two friends with us today that represent our county and our city schools in Bartow County very well. I had the privilege of being able to work intimately with Dr. Harper on personnel back at Cartersville at First Baptist, and when you get into a personnel situation, especially in a situation we were in, you get to know someone very well. And what I can tell you about Dr. Harper is not only is he a leader, a servant leader, but he's got a quiet spirit, and when drawn on, he's got that knowledge to be able to get you where you need to go. And I appreciate the fact that I could lean on him those times to be able to use the experience, the knowledge, and expertise he had dealing with people and situations to be able to get us through. Of course, you know Cartersville First Baptist is thriving today. Standing next to him, as we all have said many times, we're only as good as the people who are standing with us. And he's got his lovely wife, Adina, with him. Then I'd like to shift over to Dr. Hinesley. You talk about a school that has thrived. We just had the privilege of having Trevor here, and you see many other kids come through. Not only does this superintendent do a great job in Cartersville, but the reason I have both of them on stage today is something that's very unique, ladies and gentlemen. It's something that maybe we can learn from. It's something that not every community has. That is two superintendents, a county superintendent, a city superintendent of the schools that work hand in hand. They don't fight over the little things. They don't get upset and block things. In fact, I know of some things they probably can't share, but where they had students that needed some special attention, and one reached across from the aisle and said, you know what, we'll get it done for you. That's what we're supposed to do, is work in cooperative manner to be able to take care of the kids, and both these gentlemen do it. They're going to leave a gaping hole in Bartow County. We have some people behind them, but Dr. Hinesley, Dr. Harper, we appreciate the service you've given not only to the people of Bartow County and Cartersville, but to the state of Georgia, because many of these young men are our future leaders. And so with that, I'm going to just step back and let both of them speak, but again, thank you for your service.
Senator Thompson and body, thank you for this recognition today. As superintendents, we work very hard behind the scenes and expect no recognition for the work that we do. As you know, public education has become more difficult today with the decline of the family. So as you pass legislation, be sure and remember to think about public education in the state of Georgia. We appreciate the support that you've given us and the support that you're going to give us in the future. As mentioned by Mr. Thompson, something that's very special for me is the work with Dr. Hinesley in the city. Prior to my arrival and prior to Dr. Hinesley's arrival, there was always issues between the city and the county. We have resolved those issues professionally in working with each other in the service of our boys and girls and our staff. So again, Senator Thompson, thank you for today.
It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be honored here today, and I want to thank you as individuals and as a corporate body for the service you provide your communities and to our state. I spent 33 years in the state of Florida, my last 15 as superintendent of the 20th largest school system in the country, and I had the privilege of working with the Florida legislature, and I've had the privilege of working with you since 2005. I very much appreciate the leadership of Governor Cagle and our Senator Thompson, and I want to echo what John Harper said. We appreciate the work that you do, and we just ask that you continue to do due diligence to remember to work hard to serve those children in our great state. Again, I thank you again for recognizing me.
We have another special group. We would like to recognize. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 737 by Senator C. of the 34th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Senator Nan Orrock for her induction into the National Center for Civil and Human Rights Museum Walk of Fame and for other purposes. Whereas in 2006, after serving 10 terms in the Georgia State House of Representatives, she was elected by Atlanta voters to her first term in the Georgia State Senate, where she currently is a member of the Senate Appropriations, Finance, Health and Human Services, Higher Education, and Urban Affairs Committees. Senator Orrock is also an appointee to the Georgia World Congress Center and the Fort McPherson LRA. And whereas during her tenure with the House of Representatives, she was the first one elected to the position of House Majority Whip. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize Senator Nan Orrock for her induction into the National Center for Civil and Human Rights Museum Walk of Fame and commend her historic career of overcoming barriers and empowering the disenfranchised. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? I'm sorry. There is objection to the adoption of the resolution. Now, without objection, the resolution is therefore adopted. I'd like to congratulate the senator from the 36th on her retirement ceremony today. Not the case, not the case. We all have grown, obviously, to love the senator from the 36th and the great passion by which she brings to this body, and it is indeed an honor to recognize her today with her family present as well. And it's now my honor to ask the senator from the 34th to speak to the resolution and recognize our distinguished guest.
Thank you, Mr. President, and it is truly a joy to have a colleague who not only is my sweet mate, but a dear friend who we could all, I think the majority of the people that was in the chamber signed this resolution for Senator Nan Orrock. Most of us didn't know what a trailblazer she is, and because she is newly inducted, I'm just so proud of her. When I learned of that, I wanted to put in this resolution, but she is overwhelmed because her family is here and she was unaware. She has her son, Danny Orrock, is here. Mary Joyce Carson is here. We have Amy Tottenberg. Judge, okay, Judge, I'm sorry. Jason Grogan, you know Nan gonna correct everything. Jason Grogan, Phyllis Richardson, and Linda Lowe. There you go. All right, and of course, all of the senators pretty much on both sides of the aisle signed the resolution. But I would like to commend our very own Senator Nan Orrock for her induction into the National Center for Civil and Human Rights Museum Walk of Fame. Senator that deserved the applause because that is not an easy task. Senator Orrock has dedicated her life to public policy since 1963, where she participated in numerous civil rights events. These events include the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. She has been committed to being a voice for women as well as advocating on behalf of the disenfranchised group for decades. Senator Orrock previously served 10 terms in the Georgia State House as a representative, where she was the first woman elected to the position of House Majority Whip. She currently serves in numerous organizations outside the General Assembly, such as the President of Women Legislators Lobby, Sapelo Foundation, Progressive State Network, Women for New Direction, Women in Government, and the YWCA. Senator Orrock is also the founder of the Georgia Legislative Caucus and the Working Family Legislative Caucus. Senator Orrock is a jewel among all of us 55 when we are surrounded by her every day. And I'm going to do one thing that you all may kind of regret I'm doing. We're going to let Senator Orrock say a few words. Senator Orrock.
Did they really give me the mic? I was going to ask for the timer. That's right. 5 seconds have elapsed. Well, to my colleagues, all to the Lieutenant Governor, the staff of this great chamber, and all 55 of my colleagues, and all of the people that work so diligently to see that we can do the job that we're sent here to do. I so appreciate this honor, and am humbled by it. You know, I didn't even plan. I didn't even put on lipstick, so you know didn't know I was being recognized. It was a total, the biggest surprise I think I've ever had in my life when y'all snatched me up here.
Gotcha.
And to think that yesterday I was talking to my son in Chicago, and I walk up and here he is, here. I don't know how he pulled that off. And all my assembled friends, I'm overwhelmed. People in the balcony, I'm completely overwhelmed. I thought we were gathering down here to honor our wonderful servant women leaders that we decked out with yellow roses this morning down at the depot. So I cannot thank you enough. I have learned so much through the work that I've done, and hope that it's made me a better person and better able to serve and represent. And I'm almost without words, Mr. Governor, almost without words. But thank you for your friendship, and this is an incredible honor that I so appreciate and will treasure the rest of my days. It's an honor to serve with you and work with you and work for a better Georgia. Thank you. 1 minute and 50.
The ladies in the back really helped pull this all off, and I just want to thank LaTanya, Jocelyn, Courtney, Jade, and Alexis for pulling it off for us, because we're here in the chamber, so they are the ones that really need their names called, because they make things happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, good. Let's do a picture. How great is that?
You didn't do your thing to the ladies?
Oh, good. There's no doubt. We love Nate. Chair recognize, are there any unanimous consents? Senators wishing to rise on a personal point of privilege, Chair will recognize Senator from the 40th first. The senator will be requesting for a moment of silence in prayer. The Senate will give the senator your attention.
Go ahead. Hold on, Fran. Hold just.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, many in this room know about this already, but this past weekend, our good friend from Georgia Gwinnett College, Mary Brantley, passed away from a heart attack. Mary, she worked with elected officials both on the state level, local level, national level. A little bit of her bio. She's been involved in communications and political fields for more than a decade. She served in the Georgia Senate as director of the Senate Press Office. She was also at one time the policy advisor for the state school superintendent. She worked for the Georgia Association of Educators, both a lobbyist, director of internal communications. She started her career as a journalist, and she left there and actually worked for U.S. Senator Johnny Isakson, when he's a minority leader in the Georgia House of Representatives. You know, as the director of external affairs, Mary spent, I guess, 3 to 4 months every year down here. We've all known her in the hallway. She, you know, it's interesting. She's an Air Force brat, but she, I never knew this. She was born in Okinawa and grew up in Belgium, but also spent time in Alabama, Virginia, New York, and Texas. And then she moved to Georgia here in junior high school, when we still had junior high schools. I don't need that anymore. When I got the phone call Sunday morning from Ronald Downs, the university system, let me tell you, I've been down here 20 years. Probably one of the most genuine, kind, smiling people that I've ever been associated with, and all these people up here agree with me. We had dinner with her last week on a Tuesday night at the higher ed dinner. She hasn't been feeling well for several months, and I said, Mary, you don't have to be here. That was Mary Brantley. when I talked to the president of STAS over at Georgia Gwinnett College, he said, well, you know, that's what she did. I mean, she left this affair the other night, driving her car, had a minor automobile wreck, and, of course, a heart attack at the same time. But that's who she was. She was dedicated to her position, to her state, particularly as Gwinnett College Grizzlies. So I ask you all to please rise in a moment of silence for our good friend, Mary Brantley.
Let us pray.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from 5th Third.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to recognize a dedicated group of students from Dade County, the very northwest Georgia corner. If they'd stand up, from Dade County Middle School. Glad to have them here today.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th. 35th. Are you 35th? 35th. You wishing to be recognized? You recognize this.
Thank you, Mr. President. March is Women's Month, and this morning, all the women from the Women's Caucus, from the House and the Senate, no matter what party you're in or what race you're in, what your beliefs and cultures are, we come together and we work together in the Women's Caucus. And today, we honored our servant leaders. My servant leader is an awesome, anointed, appointed, accepted, and approved woman of God. Her name is Lydia Glaze, and she served for many years as a city councilwoman in Fairburn, Georgia. And all of a sudden, even though she's probably more than 10 years younger than me, she decided that she didn't want to run again. And so this is, since January, this is the first time that she's not serving as an elected official, but she's still working night and day for the community. And besides all that, she's the mother of 7 children, and all of them are exemplary. They're outstanding citizens and young people in the community. So I just wanted to, we gave her a resolution that was passed last Friday, and she was in the gallery a few minutes ago, and I think she's in the hallway. But I wanted to just give a tribute to, and I know that someone's going to give a tribute to all of our women, but I think it was in the 80s when a person that served in this body, and then he went on to be governor, and then President of the United States, and that was Jimmy Carter, made this month be Women's Month in the United States. And so we are honoring this month, and we honor our First Lady of the state of Georgia as well. And this morning we had our First Lady of Atlanta to be our speaker. Well, Lydia Glaze is my First Lady of the 35th District, and we honor her. So, Mr. President, I yield the well, and I give tribute to Lydia Glaze. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 48th. 48th. 48th.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we have with us today special guests in the gallery. It's my privilege to recognize 5th graders from Ferguson Elementary School in my district, Sherry Ferguson, their instructor, and their principal, Dr. Mitchell. I hope you'll join me in giving them a warm Senate welcome.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th. Point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sure many of you saw, as I did over the weekend, some comments made regarding the fact that a local company was stating that their values were not for sale. And I just wanted to rise today to say how much I appreciate that sentiment and how much I respect a private company taking a position consistent with their values and expecting that to be respected. It's a little late in coming, but I'm glad that it's here because, you know, there are a lot of other entities and companies whose values are not for sale and who are to be respected. The Green family and Hobby Lobby, their values weren't for sale. They had to go to the U.S. Supreme Court to see to it that their values could be upheld. There are small and large business owners all over our country, nonprofit charitable organizations and individuals. All they want is to be allowed to operate their businesses, their charitable organizations, and live out their lives consistent with their values. And so, Mr. President, we've got to get to the point where we can get out of our silos and take off our jerseys and stop saying, well, I'm okay with this company or this charitable organization or this individual having a particular value till I decide I disagree with it. And then I want to use the machinery of government to punish those folks until they recede from public view. So I am very glad to have seen the discussion that has taken place over the weekend about how important it is to respect the values that a company or a charitable organization or an individual chooses to live by. And we, as people who have taken an oath to protect the individual civil liberties guaranteed by our federal Constitution, by the Constitution of this state, we should take heed of those comments and make sure that we continue to move forward with the legislation offered by the senator from the 3rd earlier this year that has passed this body, the legislation offered by the senator from the 16th, which is pending in this body, because all those bills are about are making sure that a company or a charitable organization or an individual can live consistent with their values and that the government does not pick winners and losers. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 16th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. The film Hacksaw Ridge was a major motion picture in 2016, a victory for the film industry. And it brings into a part of history into light that many of us probably, and many of you probably saw it. It tells a story of Desmond Doss, a conscientious objector who volunteered to serve in World War II as a medic, but refused to carry a gun because of his religious convictions. Now, Desmond got a lot of flack for his beliefs, and some people wanted to force him to carry a gun. But he held firm to what he believed, and as the film illustrates in Hacksaw Ridge, under heavy fire, Desmond Doss saved 70 American soldiers who otherwise would most likely have died at the hands of the Imperial Japanese soldiers. Something happened. October 1945, Doss became the only conscientious objector to ever receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. After the war, he moved to Rising Sun, Georgia, where the Desmond Doss Memorial Highway was named in his honor and is located in the senator from the 53rd District. It's between Highway 27 and Highway 193 in Walker County, Georgia. Doss was only able to save the lives of those 70 men because his religious freedom was protected. Today, we don't protect those religious freedoms in the state of Georgia in the way we do from Georgia law. Today, Georgians are vulnerable through our own inaction in the legislature, and we are all to blame. It's time to act. It's time to pass Religious Freedom Restoration Act in the state of Georgia. Each one of you have a copy of his book on your desk. It is a phenomenal read of a man's belief and how he moved from a conscientious objector to a Medal of Honor winner. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 43rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. I rise to bring recognition to your beautiful yellow rose. I would ask that each one of you would wear it in honor of Women's History Month and women's suffrage and the right for women to finally get to vote. If you support us, and I know you do, would you please wear your wonderful yellow rose? We've also recognized some women this morning at our breakfast, and they are in the gallery, phenomenally wearing yellow roses, and we congratulate and celebrate you this morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I am before you today again, as the rest of the ladies has come, to share about women's suffrage and getting the right to vote. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank Georgia Link for always providing these roses for us to wear so that we can acknowledge that there was a period until the late 1920s when women just didn't have too much rights at all to do very much of anything. We've come a long way, baby. But my honoree this morning was Sabrina, who worked at an automobile industry for 30 years. She had held various positions in the dealership, starting as a cashier, but now is currently co-owner of Heritage Cadillac Mitsubishi. Sabrina Crawford has been a Clayton County Chamber Board member for 6 years and as well as a Clayton County Chamber Woman in Business Council for 2 years. She has deep care for the development and well-being of young women and was inspired by many young women around her to make a change. Sabrina is the founder of Gigi's House, which is a home for the underage trafficking victims that tackles this prevalent issue one person at a time. I chose her because she has a lot of the same views that I have when it comes down to sex trafficking. We've passed a lot of legislation dealing with this issue, and we still have a long way to go, but I wanted to acknowledge Sabrina today. She's in the gallery. She can stand. If not, it's been a long morning already, and I thoroughly enjoyed it at the Nikki T. Randall Servant Leadership Award ceremony this morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 55th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate.
It's my pleasure to honor several women this morning. Several years ago, we created the Nikki T. Randall Servant Leadership Award Ceremony. And when I say we, I'm talking about the Women Legislative Caucus. And that's a caucus that's a combined of Democratic women and Republican women. And we come together with issues and we discuss issues and invite guests to talk about their issues. But this morning, we had the mayor of Atlanta. We had CEOs of companies. We had law enforcement working with young people, a commander captain. We had women that have worked in retail, a woman that's celebrating in her community and working for breast cancer, taking care of the homeless and taking care of those people that cannot take care of themselves and feed themselves. We had educators. We had a principal. We had domestic violence advocates, advocates for safety and cultural affairs, advocates for social justice for women, women in financial management, marketing professionals, attorneys, women in construction, women taking care of special needs for children, professors, health administrators, a published author, a female comedian, early childhood learning professionals, executive directors of communities, auto dealership owner, information management, and we celebrated 30 women. And we were so and is proud of all those women that are taking their time to take care of these different areas in their lives when they could be doing something else. And I want to say thank you to those women that are in the gallery. If all of you will stand and let us recognize you and thank you for all the work that you do in all of our communities. Thank you so much, Mr. President. And if you would like, please come down and take a picture with us.
There is a consent calendar of privileged resolutions that's before you. Is there objection? Without objection, the consent calendar of privileged resolutions are therefore adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? Moving on to the local calendar, Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed on any of the local bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agree in the Porter Committee on the State and Local Governmental Operations, which Farrell passes the bill, chairs none, and Porter Committee has agreed to? All those in favor of the local consent calendar will vote aye. Those opposed, no, and Secretary will unlock the machine. On the local consent calendar, the yeas are 47 and the nays are 2. And these bills having received requisite constitutional majorities, therefore adopted. Moving on to the general calendar. Secretary will read House Bill 162.
House Bill 162 by Representative Price of the 48th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 7, Chapter 7, Title 48 of the OCGA relating to set-off debt collection so as to revise the procedures for the transfer of set-offs by the Administrative Office of the Courts to the court for whom the debt is owed and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 162, a bill entitled Enactment Article 7, Chapter 7, and Title 48 of the OCGA relating to set-off debt collection so as to allow the Administrative Office of the Courts to waive the administrative collection assistance fee to require the Administrative Office of the Courts to transfer funds owed to a court on at least a quarterly basis and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 3rd to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 162 makes some minor changes to the process relating to the receipts of funds by the Administrative Office of the Courts and certain agencies during the debt set-off process. Basically, it changes the requirement that an administrative fee be charged. It allows the AOC to discretion as to whether or not to charge it. It provides that interest earned on the funds in that account are to be applied towards the administrative expenses, and then it requires that the funds be paid to the court claiming that it's owed the debt at least quarterly. So, Mr. President, I'll be glad to answer any questions about the bill.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th. No, speak? No, you're done? Okay. No further questions.
I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 41st.
41st. Without objection, Senator from the 41st will be excused. Is there an amendment? No. Okay. The question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agreed on Report of Committee which fail pass the bill. Chair is none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put in? Objections? Chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, yeas are 53 and the nays are 0. And this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 309.
House Bill 309 by Representative Bauer of the 103rd and others, the bill be titled Enactment Code Section 502124 of the OCGA relating to exceptions to state liability so as to provide that the state shall have no liability for activities of the organized militia when engaged in state or federal training or duty and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 32nd to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I want to present to you House Bill 309, which is a bill related to the Georgia State Defense Force. And what this does is it exempts the activities of the organized militia from any liability for losses resulting from its activities. Under current law, the state is exempt from any liability for losses resulting from the activities of the Georgia National Guard when engaged in state or federal training or duty, with the exception of motor vehicle accidents. This legislation clarifies this exemption by specifically exempting the activities of the organized militia. The Georgia State Defense Force is a group of trained volunteers. They're unarmed, and they assist state and local agencies in whenever they need help. For example, with disaster recovery. I'm very familiar with them as part of the Medical Association's Medical Reserve Corps because they really did the heavy lifting during the evacuation of the hurricane victims from St. Croix, St. Thomas, and Puerto Rico. So this closes a loophole in that law, protects the Georgia State Defense Force, and I would commend it for your consideration. If there are no questions, I yield the well.
No questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to reading report of committee which fail to pass the bill? Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 5th.
5th, without objection, Senator from the 5th will be excused. Now, is there objection to reading report of committee which fail to pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, like the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, nays are 0, and this bill having received requisite constitutional majority is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 475.
House Bill 475 by Representative Hardin of 148th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 17 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to charitable solicitation so as to implement additional requirements for use of collection receptacles for donations and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to House Bill 475, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 17 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to charitable solicitation so as to implement additional requirements for use of collection receptacles for donations and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Tippins of the 37th offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities substitute to House Bill 475 by adding after to provide for related matters on line 4 the following: to allow local governing authorities to issue written notices, to allow local governing authorities to petition the Superior Court for an order for the removal of collection receptacles and for other purposes. Amendment 1A by Senator Tippins of the 37th offers the following amendment. Amendment 1 to the House Bill Committee substitute 475 by striking the words on line 38 on lines 85 and adding in the place the words online. Z, striking the words on line 39 on lines 86 and add in their place the words online and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 20th. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 475 is in response to requests from constituents that are trying to get a handle on these donation collection receptacles. The esteemed chairman of the Education Committee had a bill related to this last week, but this particularly deals with receptacles placed on private property without the property owner's permission, and collection receptacles not being maintained and serviced properly, causing an eyesore in the community. Section 1 clarifies that these are outdoor receptacles. That was a accommodation for Goodwill and Salvation Army to not interfere with their freestanding buildings. Section 2 requires written permission from the property owner before placing the receptacle, or provides for property owner to demand removal of the receptacle, provides for the property owner to remove the receptacle himself if the owner of the receptacle fails to remove it within 30 days of the demand, requires the receptacle owner to maintain it structurally sound, clean, and sanitary, and to regularly empty it at least every 2 weeks. And then Section 3 provides for civil penalties for violators. Ask for your favorable consideration of that. There are some friendly amendments offered, and the House author of the bill has met with us, and he's agreeable to these amendments, so I encourage you to please vote to approve the amendments too. Be happy to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I will yield the well. Thank you, Mr. President.
You do have some questions. Chair recognizes the minority leader, the senator from the 41st.
Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that similar regulations could be imposed by the local governing authority like the county or city? Is there some reason that you have decided not to leave it up to local governments to enact similar ordinances?
Not being an attorney, I'm not really positive, but I think it's because it has to do with private property, receptacles on private property.
Chair recognizes senator from the 6th for a question.
Will the senator yield for a couple of questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, is the intent of this bill to target the unauthorized placement of charitable donation boxes?
That's correct.
Okay. And because it applies to charitable organizations,
Well, it's for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, both. Some of these donation boxes are actually they are owned by for-profit companies.
So my
and those tend to be the bad actors, excuse me.
So my question is, it talks about a person placing these boxes unlawfully or without the property owner's permission. I'm interested in how far that goes. Who are we talking about? Are we talking about the staff person who's paid minimum wage to go place a box? Are we talking about the corporate executive? That's my question.
We're talking about the owner of the receptacle is what I think we're talking about.
But it talks about placing too, and it talks about that. And isn't it true that it makes it a misdemeanor to not follow this code section?
They could be charged as a misdemeanor, yes.
So we're criminalizing putting out charitable donation boxes without getting permission?
Potentially, be at the discretion of the court.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
There are no further questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes senator from 37th present his amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I presented a bill very much like this on crossover day, and I think I mentioned at the time that Representative Hardin had a bill, and it was our intent to merge the two bills. This is amendment number 1 is a merging of the two bills that gives authority to local governments as well to enforce these ordinances, gives them the power to remove these boxes if the owner of the boxes does not adequately address the problems that arise. Amendment 1A leaves the original higher penalties on the paid solicitors. The paid solicitors are those for-profit companies that operate these boxes, and quite often they're out of state and very non-responsive, and it removes the higher penalties, cash penalties, from the true for-profits. excuse me, the nonprofits. But that's the sum and substance of the Amendment 1 and 1A. I'd urge your passage of both of these. If there's no questions, I'll yield the will.
No questions, Senator. Question is on amendment number 1A. 1A, is there objection? Without objection, 1A has been adopted. Now the question is on amendment 1 as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, amendment 1 is now adopted. Then the question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute as amended is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in a report of committee which favor pass the bill. Chairs none. Report of committees agree to. Shall the main question be now put in the objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed no. And the secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 1, and this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, I move the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute for HB 683, and I'll take the will.
Read the caption.
House Bill 683 by Representative Ralston of the 7th and others, a bill entitled an act amending an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018, known as the General Appropriations Act, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate substitute to House Bill 683 by inserting the numbered sections and amounts appropriated therefore as contained in the attached document House Bill 683 Senate substitute as amended by the House in lieu of the corresponding numbered sections and amounts appropriated therefore as contained in the Senate substitute and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 4th to speak to his motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I bring to you the FY 2018 amended budget as amended by the House and urge that your adoption as the House did this past Thursday. You know, when I presented the Senate version of the amended budget some 2 weeks ago, it seems like a long time ago, I explained that the amended budget is basically a true-up of the general budget and contains some cash items that make sense to fund now. Consequently, we have basically been negotiating the few differences in the House and Senate versions. Those are included in the House amendment and voted on by, and will be voted on by both sides. So on your desk today, you have basically the Senate budget as we passed it out of here, and the 9-page amendment that we've agreed to on those differences, and then any additions that have been brought to us by the governor in the meantime. One of the things the governor brought to the conference table was a revenue estimate increase totaling $108.9 million,
which makes the new total of the FY 2018 budget $25,413,015,092. The breakdown of the appropriation of these funds is included in the amendment agreed on by the House and the Senate that you've got, and your copy is pink, I believe. So you have two documents, as I said, on your desk, the amended Senate version, exactly as we passed it out, and the 9-page amendment that contains the agrees between the House and the Senate versions, and the additions brought by the governor in his revenue estimate increase. There are a number of Senate cuts and changes that the House agreed to that are listed in the amendment. I'm only going to touch on the significant additions or agreements and try to make this as painless as possible for you. By the way, in my reference, if you'll notice on the left side of your amendment, you'll see the House numbers on the left and the Senate numbers on the right. Those numbers correspond to the Senate version. The number under the Senate name corresponds to the Senate budget. So if we look up the very first item, 2.1, that's in your Senate budget under 2.1. It's in numerical order. So if you follow my numbers down, you can look it right up in your budget as we move along, because I'm using the Senate numbering system. There are 3 agreements in the amendment having to do with accountability courts in the Lookout Mountain and Oconee judicial circuits. They add the judges, the district attorneys, and the public defenders to those 2 courts for the new accountability courts. Item 48.3 in the Agriculture Department, the governor moved bonds for the Agriculture Department from the 2019 budget. There were bonds in 19. He's moved them forward to the amended budget and put them in cash. You'll see several items like this in your amendment, and they total about $17 million, and the reason for that will become apparent when we bring you the 19 budget here, hopefully, in a few days. Item 56.3, the House agreed to the Senate add of $220,000 for the Albany Advocacy Resource Center in Developmental Disabilities, an after-school program for children. Item 58.3, the Senate agreed with the House to fund with cash another 19 bond item for $410,000 for a kitchen renovation at the State Hospital in Augusta at MCG. Item 58.4, the House and Senate agreed to fund $2.7 million for crisis center beds. As you know, I'm sure the state is woefully short of crisis center beds. We basically balanced out of that item and put every dollar we could scrape that we didn't have another use for into that area. That won't create a whole standing unit, but it will help to rehab an existing unit to be able to be used for crisis beds. Hopefully in the 19 budget we'll address crisis center beds even more fully. Item 66.1, the House agreed to a small add of $26,000 for the Equal Access to Gainful Learning and Employment program under the Governor's Council for Developmental Disabilities. Item 69.1, in anticipation of a ruling by the 11th Circuit, the Governor has funded $29.7 million to make counties whole who are affected by the federal court case on the jet fuel ruling. These are assets, tax proceeds that have been pledged for SPLOST and eSPLOST. This is in anticipation of that court ruling. Should they win the court case, those funds will just lapse into the reserve. Item 81.3 adds new funding to the One Georgia Fund of some $4.5 million. Item 85.6, the House agreed with the Senate to fund for a small amount a rural health center for $100,000. Item 85.7, the House agreed with the Senate to create a grant program of $1 million to help health systems use new technology to improve health outcomes in rural areas, and we thank the Senator from the 11th for his leadership in that item. Item 85.8 is a new add by both bodies that was brought to us in conference by the Speaker Pro Tem over in the House, that is assisting hospitals who have been hard hit by the flu outbreak and have had a large amount of self-pay care that they've issued. I have a list of the top 15 hospitals, including Grady Hospital, which will receive $398,788, and a list of 55 rural hospitals who will receive $4,000 each, just to help assuage their condition from having provided a lot of self-paid care having to do with the flu outbreak. Item 112.4 moves $3 million in bonds from the Department of Corrections in the FY19 budget, moves it to cash in the 18 budget. Item 124.4 is an add of $82,415 brought by the governor to fund a deputy position in the Department of Economic Development for Rural Development. Item 126.1, also brought by the governor for $150,000, is to fund arts grants to communities who met the score to receive the art grants this year, but they lost out when funds were depleted and exhausted. These are one-time grants, $150,000. I have a list of those cities and grant programs around the state. Item 135.3, the House agreed to the add by the Senate for $15.7 million for new school buses for systems statewide. This was a change that the governor had proposed about $15 million. The House added to it, and the Senate added to that total as well. These are badly needed around the state. Item 149.1 is the QBE midterm adjustment, which actually went down, but it was because of later data. But included in that figure is $975,240 for account error, to correct account error in the Kendesi schools in the Atlanta public school system. Those of you who are in the Atlanta area are familiar with that case. Item 154.4 is a Senate initiative to provide grants for middle schools to offer coding instruction for 7th and 8th grade students. This funding provides both equipment and instructional training. It's an area that we believe we really need to be moving into for middle grade students. Item 179.7 agrees with the House and moves a bond for $550,000 for a DFAX building from bonds into cash, and that'll reduce the bond package in 19. Item 228.4 was brought by the governor, which moves a bond for Jekyll Island for $1.6 million, moves that bond from the FY19 budget into cash in the F18 budget. It's part of that $17 million total of bonds that are moved from the FY19 package to cash in the F18 package. Item 400.1, the governor brought $8.6 million to fund the equipment and furnishings for the new judicial building that's going under construction right down the street here. That was not in the bond package in 19. It's a new item, but it's going to be paid for in cash. Item 279.2 funds $75,000 for a Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation. That's just the beginning of some of the efforts from both the House and the Senate's efforts to encourage rural innovation and development. Item 288.1, the governor brought some $43 million to the $17.6 million already in the amended budget to total $60.7 million to fully fund the Forest Land Protection Act grants to counties and school systems. This is something that's been running behind every year. If you're in a county that has a lot of forest lands that are under the CUBA programs, these grants, which is, when you hear people say FLIPA, that's what they're talking about, is forest land protection grants. This is to fully fund those grants and catch the state up. Then item 325.4 funds $75,000 for the transition of a former Labor Department building in Cedartown for an adult education and workforce development facility. Item 326.4 adds funding of some $2 million brought by the governor for the statewide marketing program for the Technical College System of Georgia. I don't know whether you have seen the new, over the last few months, the new really well done advertising program, advertising particularly the strategic industries programs for which there is free tuition, whether you've noticed that or not, but that is something that's been very successful. We've added $2 million to an existing $1 million already to keep that program going, and they've received outstanding results from this advertising, so apparently it's working for them. Item number 329.5 moves bonds again from the 19 bond package of $10.3 million for the Technical College System of Georgia to cash in the amended. So you add those all up, and that's about $17 million. A big project will be funded in the bond package, and this is helping to make that happen in the 19 budget. Item 335.4 is the item the governor mentioned in the State Address for regional airports to lengthen runways for corporate aircraft. The governor added 2 more airports to the package, which now totals $25.9 million. And lastly, 344.2 adds some $28,650 to the Veteran Services Department for the subacute rehabilitation therapy unit at the Georgia War Veterans Home, a rehab unit that the Senate took a leadership role in making to happen at that War Veterans Home. So with that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can. I've got some documents here, and including a copy of the governor's letter raising the revenue estimate.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Senator, thank you very much for your great work on the budget. I have just one question, if I may, regarding the forest land protection you mentioned. Can you give me some clarity on that? Is that an increase? You mentioned 288.1 above what had been the level reached earlier by what was allocated?
Under the program, the state has been running behind and has not been fully funding the replacement of ad valorem taxes on this property that's placed in a reserve. It's placed in these forest land protection grants. Basically, the state has owed this money to the counties all along. We're just catching up to where we're finally caught up on what we owe them. But we owed them the money all along. The counties were just being shorted that money up until now. So this makes them whole.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
No further questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I urge your adoption, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much.
The senator has moved. The Senate agreed to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 683. All of those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0, and this, the motion is passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, I move that House Bill 683 be immediately transmitted to the House.
Immediately transmitted to the House. Is there objection? Without objection, the bill will be immediately transmitted. Chair now recognizes the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm providing notice pursuant to Senate Rule 7-1.10 for a special action motion on Senate Bill 317, a local bill.
1 day notice. He's giving 1 day notice on a local bill. Senator from the 45th, what purpose you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Could you tell me what that bill is about, please?
It has something to do with Buford, but outside of that,
Not a Buford wolf.
No. It is a local bill dealing with Fulton County, and only it's a local act that has been agreed upon. It's Chair recognizes Senator from the 46th, the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, March 7th.
10 a.m. Read the announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment at 4:50 of the Capitol. Insurance and Labor will meet at 1 p.m. and 3:10 of the CLOB. Public Safety will meet at 1 p.m. in Mez 1. Transportation will meet at 2 p.m. and 3:10 of the CLB. Appropriations, Health and Human Development, and Public Health Subcommittees meet at 2 p.m. and 3:41 of the Capitol. Education and Youth will meet at 3 p.m. and 4:50 of the Capitol. Finance will meet at 3 p.m. in Mez 1. Judiciary will meet at 4 p.m. and 3:07 of the CLOB. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 31st for an announcement. Please give the Senator your attention.
I want to draw your attention to the invitation to join us for our prayer fellowship Wednesday morning, 7:15, room 125.
Are there any other announcements? Like to Chair recognizes Senator from the 45th for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick announcement. The senator from the 11th and I are going to have our joint appropriations subcommittee hearings this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Isn't that correct, Senator? 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock. And Health and Human Services will meet tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Like to recognize on the floor of the Senate, joining us from Hall County, Judge Brakefield. Glad to have you, Judge, visiting with us today, Judge. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, March the 7th, 2018. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. Actually, the ayes do clearly have it. We stand adjourned.